Hello and welcome back to the Universe of God. We are continuing on with the tale of two messiahs as we examine the witness found in Zechariah and the parallelism taking place. This is part 11. We're going to jump back in where we left off as we were comparing the Old Testament and the New Testament regarding the Messiah, what was written and prophetically spoken, and how it was also fulfilled and written about in the New Testament. So we're going to just pick back up where we left off. It was God's will that the Messiah would die for all humanity. In Zechariah 13:7, we have a scripture that says, "Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man, my associate, declares the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd that the sheep may be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones." In John 18:11, it says, "So Jesus said to Peter, Put the sword into the sheath. The cup which the Father has given me, shall I not drink it?" So this is a fulfillment here of what is prophetically spoken here. Basically, Christ is on assignment. He's declared as God's shepherd here, God's associate, okay? Declares the Lord of hosts, the Lord of all. And he is going to suffer. He's going to be struck. And so in John 18:11, before I elaborate on that, additionally, his sheep are going to be scattered. Right? We have the Jews and the Gentiles. The sheep are going to be scattered. They're going to be all over the world now. Okay. And this is where the gospel goes out into all the world to bring these sheep back. So this was purposeful. And then in John 18:11, Jesus is telling Peter, this is the cup that he has to drink from. He is prophetically determined beforehand. It was foretold that he would suffer. This was the cup that he would drink from. So, Israel would be scattered as a result of rejecting the Messiah. Zechariah 13:7 again backs this up. And then we go to Matthew 26:31 and 56. "Then saith Jesus unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled." So here's the fulfillment. Jesus said, it's written. Okay, this is written about me again in the volume of the book. This is written in heaven. This is written in earth. This is, this is the predestined plan of God, for Jesus's life. This is why he came. So, and the sheep are going to be scattered. Okay. So here we have a fulfillment of this prophetic word, and Jesus is even backing it up. It is already written about me that these things must happen. So the Messiah would bring salvation. Zechariah 9:9, as we've discussed before, tells of this Messiah who's bringing salvation. And then in Luke 19:10, it says, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost, which was lost." So, once we hear about the Lord, once we hear the good news of the gospel, once we understand, that Jesus is the Messiah, we have this understanding, this revelation. Basically, we have this enlightenment about the truth of who Christ is. We are no longer lost, but we are found. And that's what he came to do. So here we have this parallelism. We have this, again, foretelling and fulfilling of Christ, the Messiah. So we have the two pictures of the Messiah as a suffering Messiah and a victorious Messiah. And so in Micah 5:2, it talks about the origin of the suffering Messiah. And in Daniel 7:13, it talks about the origin of the victorious Messiah, which is heaven. And in Zechariah 9:9, the suffering Messiah, his appearance, he comes on a donkey. Of course, we know that's not the only way that he comes. He's born in a manger, surrounded by sheep and shepherds and, so forth and so on. But the victorious Messiah, his appearance is said to be in the clouds. This is also in Daniel 7:13. And the suffering Messiah, his purpose, he comes to give hope. Okay, he suffers to bring us the good news. He's anointed. Matter of fact, I want to share it. It says, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has appointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Okay, so this is throughout the scriptures in Isaiah 61, verse 1 through 2a in the Tanakh, Isaiah 49:6, Isaiah 11, verse 1 through 3. But then we have the victorious Messiah. His purpose is a little different. And this is very important if we want to understand the two Messiahs. And it's been said before, but here is validity to what I've shared in terms of this is in God's word. The suffering Messiah is not coming back the same as the victorious Messiah. He's not coming lowly, in this humbleness as a babe, going through the whole process of being super small to great, right? Starting off as a seed, growing in the womb of a woman, being a child, having to grow up under the authority of of earthly parents, so forth and so on. But he's coming back as a victorious Messiah, and his purpose is not about giving hope. That is now. His purpose is associated with judgment, okay? Before he rules the nations, he will judge. And so it says in Isaiah 11, verse 4 through 5, the victorious Messiah comes back with righteousness, okay? Not that he's not already righteous, but comes back with righteousness. He will judge the needy. With justice, he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips, he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. So when he comes back, he is striking the earth with the rod of his word, because like he says over and over, it is written. God has given us his word so that we may know the truth, so that we may see the light, so that we may accept the gift, so that we may take the opportunity to enter into the promised land through grace and through mercy. But when he comes back with judgment, it's to slay the wicked and to set free the poor, and the needy, those who have been destitute under the hand of the wicked. Anyhow, moving on with the two pictures of the Messiah, in Psalm 118 and 22 and Isaiah 53, 2 through 6, in the Tanakh, the suffering Messiah, he comes to suffer, faces rejection, he's afflicted. It says he had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering, like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities, and the punishment that brought us peace was upon him. And by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray, all of us, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. So we see that if we read the Gospels, if we hear this good news, we'll hear that there was some suffering, of course, that he faced in order for us to receive this gift of salvation, to receive this great hope, to receive this connection back to the promised land, back to the Father. So this is very important, because even today he is rejected. He's rejected by the people. The gospel is one that is associated with peace. This, Christianity, and it doesn't mean that there's not some foul play, because we are fallen, fallible people. There is going to be foul play and things. However, and so nothing is perfect, but we see Christianity as one of the most peaceful religions. It's one that promotes peace. It promotes turning the other cheek when someone smacks you. It promotes loving your enemy. It promotes blessing those who curse you. I mean, this is a big difference. You know, this is a big switch from eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Okay. So again, promoting this grace, but still he is rejected, even though, like it says, he has laid down his life and taken on the iniquity of us all just to offer us this peace, to offer us this second chance. So that even though he suffered and was wounded, we're healed. So the victorious Messiah, when the victorious Messiah is on the scene, it says, a day of the Lord is coming when your plunder will be divided among you. I will gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half to the eastern sea and half to the western sea, in summer and in winter. The Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day, there will be one Lord, and his name the only name. So when Messiah comes back victoriously, yes, he's bringing judgment to defeat wicked so that he can, restore all things back to its former glory, so there can be peace in the land. So there can be one Lord, not all these different gods that everybody's serving, but there can be one Lord, one way, to follow. And that is what we were created for in the beginning, whether we know it or not. So there's a way, that we should be living. There's a way that things work best. There's a blueprint and design. And that's the way that I'm speaking of. So, there will be one Lord, and he will be king over the whole earth, the one that is qualified to bring judgment and who is just. So the Messiah who suffers, he experiences an atoning death. And the Messiah, the victorious Messiah, experiences eternal dominion. So these are, again, carrying on the two pictures of the Messiah. But as I end out this part of it, there's also the resurrection. So the suffering and victorious Messiah, there is a resurrection. Psalm 16:10-11 says, because you will not abandon me to the grave, nor will you let your Holy One see decay. You have made known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. There's the path, the way to life, where there's joy and eternal pleasures here. This is speaking of Christ and the resurrection, but this is also ministering to us as God's people, as his children. Basically, the offer on the table doesn't get any better than this. You're guaranteed a path to life, and this path to life, this way, this truth, this light will fill you with joy. You will be in God's presence where you will experience joy and eternal pleasures. This is for God's people. Okay. This is what has been offered through this resurrection. So I really try to lay out the picture of the Messiah, both suffering and victorious, as well as the parallelism taking place in the Bible with regard to King Messiah ben David and Messiah ben Joseph. And I'm going to conclude part 11 with this parallelism that I've shared with regard to the Old Testament and the New Testament, and how we have the Word, witnessing, bearing witness of this Messiah who's to come and suffer, and who's to bring salvation, but also to come in victory as a king, coming to rule the nations eventually. So when we come back in part 12, we're going to go into Zechariah a little bit more, and we're going to go into Joshua a little bit more with parallelism as I finish this out before we go into the parts with Gemini. So come back in part 12 as we finish this out before we go into Gemini with the Tale of Two Messiahs.